And now, the Rink Rap Podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's up, Blueshirts faithful? I'm Jim Cerny. This is the Rink Rap Podcast. Thanks for joining us again this week. It is a massively important stretch here for the New York Rangers organization. We've got a lot to get to as we got, it's draft week, obviously. And of course, July 1st is a little more than a week away. So we got free agency. Vincent Trocheck is still hanging around, hasn't been traded yet. We've got a lot to get to. Thanks for liking. Thanks for following us and subscribing here on the podcast. And of course, following us as well. Everything we write over at foreverblueshirts.com. And joining us right off the hopper here is Chris Peters from Flow Sports, of course, NHL Draft expert, prospect expert, and everything. He is a great guy to have as we get down to the nitty gritty. Rangers with 11 picks in the draft, including 2 in the first round, including the number 5 overall pick, 7 picks in the first 3 rounds. Yeah, Ranger fans, I know you know all the numbers, but this is the guy that's going to help us break it down. Chris, thanks for a few minutes today.
Oh, Jim, my pleasure. Yeah, it's an exciting time. I think it's always exciting when you have a top 10 pick as well. So looking forward to hopefully helping you guys break it down a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about it's always exciting when you have a top 10 pick, except when you're the Rangers and you've blown so many top 10 picks in recent memory, right? Like, we don't want to hang that on, Chris Drury and John Lilly just yet, right? But, because that was kind of predated their regime. But still, like, Ranger fans are, like, really nervous. They're excited on one hand, and they're, like, really nervous on the other. They're like, can we blow another top 10 pick? Can we blow another lottery pick, right? And it's almost unfair, but you totally understand what where the fan base is coming from.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing is it's tough. Obviously, the Lafreniere pick coming out of COVID, that was, you kind of get that was a tough one. And then the really, like, the Kaco one is still one where both of those players were like the consensus guys in their slots.
Right.
And so
right.
You can't really anticipate, like, everybody, like most teams would have made that pick, right? And so sometimes when you are bad matters just as much as
yeah.
as the actual being bad. So, I think I fully understand the trepidation. What I would say is that this year, I think 5 is actually a really good spot to be, because you're going to get some of that clarity. And then you're going to have whoever is that next player on your list. I think you're going to be very happy with who that player is. And you say, okay, well, you look at the different positions, and could it be a Carson or a Caleb Malhotra, or, another one of those premium defensemen. And there's good, basically you're in a spot where there's pretty good cushion in terms of where the bottom drops out. And so I think if you're the Rangers right now, you have to feel pretty confident. I think the one thing you're not confident about is how the 4 picks ahead of you are going to go. And if anybody's going to try to jump in there, if anybody's going to try to move up, all these different things, if you want to move up, like all these different things that kind of come into play when you're talking about making a pick this high. But I do think this year really it's a good range to just get that next best available player relative to who you value the highest. And I think that the Rangers will have that kind of dialed in. And as you said, like, there have been changes made and other things too, in terms of, the personnel and other things like that. So I think there's a lot to, still consider. And I think they're going to do everything they can to, hit a home run with this one, because it is an important pick.
Massively important. And I know we mentioned, or you mentioned Lafreniere and Kaco. Obviously, those are because one was the number 1 overall pick. The other one was the number 2 overall pick, back-to-back, consecutive years.
Right.
Sure, Ranger fans and, people that look at the Rangers focusing on that. But there's also, they'll throw the name Vitaly Kravtsov at you pretty quickly too,
Yeah,
so
Anderson,
when we talk, Lias Anderson, when we talk about swings and misses, there are some big ones.
Yeah. So, like, and that's true. I mean, like, I think it's kind of interesting because the top 10 busts is rarer now, I feel like, but the Rangers have done a pretty solid job of making those picks. And I mean, like, and you look at the way that it's kind of set things up for right now. Like, I don't think the Rangers are in this position if they hit on all those picks, we'd be talking about him as a perennial contender by this
Right.
point.
Right.
Again, it just comes down to, like, in Lafreniere's year, like, it was a weird year. Like, some things happen. This year is weird too, but it's weird in a completely different way. Cause I think, like, to me, the top of the draft, like, I don't feel like there's a true number one, but I feel like there's a wide group of players that would all be top 5 picks in most other years. So, like,
Right.
it's kind of a strange dynamic. So that's the thing, is, like, I think there's, like, a lot of options. And I think if you're in the first 13 guys, I feel very strongly about. It's those guys that kind of come after that are a little bit. So as long as they're, kind of picking within that range, there's all sorts of different players. You've got defensemen, centers, winger, like,
Right.
so it's just a matter of now finding that right fit.
Yeah. And again, part of this is, teasing and joking a little bit and, laughing as you walk through the cemetery. A Ranger fan might say, when we go back and, you revisit Kaco and Lafreniere. Again, I don't want to repeat the history. We want to look forward, but, with Laf, the guy was the consensus, like, real consensus for years heading into that draft, top guy. So it's not like they said, this Lafreniere is supposed to be great, but let's try this guy, even though he's a reach. And then they whiffed, right? And of course, it was a COVID year too, which played a massive factor.
Right. And, I think the other thing that kind of happened with both players is, just kind of some of the developmental decisions in terms of, like, with Lafreniere coming in in a strange hybrid season, Kaco coming in right away, not saying that he should have necessarily gone back to Liga where he was a pretty strong player, but, like, those decisions, like, I always think you can always rush a player, and, like, Lafreniere coming in a less than ideal circumstance, and then Kaco really not being ready and maybe not having the correct personnel coaching wise either for those types of players, can really impact you negatively. So, I think that there's, as important as the draft is, and it is important to get that right, those decisions that come immediately following the draft are even more important, because when a player enters the league is really, I think, the most important decision that a team makes. And if that player is not ready, making the decision quickly enough to not let that get too far down the road is probably the next most important decision as well. So it's a compounding of errors, and that's the way that it kind of goes. But I think now, looking forward, you've got, new opportunities. You've got, new staff in Hartford. You've got all sorts of different things that you can kind of look to and say, okay, we're making changes here to improve our situation. And I think they will. Like, I think that this is a great opportunity. This is a great, fresh opportunity for the Rangers here at where they sit.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And also, as we debate, you and I debate, experts debate, scouts debate. I'm sure they're debating right now in the Rangers offices about who they're going to select with the number 5 overall pick. I think you make such a crucial point there about it's the next step. It's that development. So let's say Carson Carls. A lot of people think Carson Carls could turn pro right now, at his age and at his development, that he could be an NHL player this year. Yeah. But is that what's best for him? Like, the Rangers aren't going to win a Stanley Cup this season. Okay. I'm going to go out on that limb, Chris. They're not winning the Stanley Cup this year. Okay.
All right.
So
I'll take your word for it.
But, he, Verhoff, Malhotra, all these guys are all committed, to college. And to me, even though it's number 5 pick, and the temptation is there to have these guys turn pro. To me, and again, I'm not being paid by James Dolan here to win or lose games, right? And then to develop an organization. But to me, I'd be like, those kids are committed to go to college. All of them. One of them may be your pick there.
Yeah.
I'd be fine if they go and they get at least a year. Maybe it's only 1 year, but at least that year of NCAA experience, I think, which would be invaluable to the bigger picture down the road for them.
Yeah, and this hybrid option was not available 2 years ago. So the thing is like the way the landscape has shifted, a lot of these players will play their draft season, as Carson Karls did, in the CHL, and then they'll go to college. Some of the guys go earlier, like Keaton Verhoff went to college a little bit earlier and now is going to, he'll probably stay at North Dakota another year. But because now those players have that option, because you couldn't have sent them to the AHL in years past, now you're given this option that's really this jump between junior and pro, because college is a tougher league to play in. It's more structured. The players are older, bigger, stronger. It's giving you that almost pro feel, but it's not like, in the AHL where you're playing against guys that have been in the league for 15 years. Which I think is another great developmental step, but this is one that's just before that, and so that gives you a little bit of that taste. And then I think that's really where things get interesting. So yeah, like a guy like Carlson in particular, absolutely, like making that commitment to North Dakota. I think there's, maybe a few teams that would consider putting him in pro, but I think now that he's made that decision, it's like, oh yeah, that saves us a year on the contract. That saves us an opportunity. That's a year of development. Let him come in ready. And like in a lot of cases, you look at Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, all these players played multiple years in college after their draft season. So that is, well, in Quinn's case, it was during, but still, like, 2 years is a really good, like, most of those guys that play 2 to 3 years don't play in the AHL. They go straight to the NHL. And so I think that's the thing that a lot of these teams and players have to, kind of look at, is like, what makes this guy special to jump that timeline? And that's the question they're going to have to ask each other, when they get to that decision.
Right. So as you see it playing out here, and again, none of us have the crystal ball. You already laid out multiple, options. Teams could jump up, could trade up. San Jose hold on to that number 2 pick. They seem to be perhaps the one team that might be willing to do something with their slot ahead of the Rangers. But let's go under the assumption that in some order, Stenberg and McKenna and Reed, and would you say Malhotra most likely are going to be the 4? Like, I know,
it's tough.
The Malhotra one's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's tough to say because like I think really like the questions begin at 2. Like, what are the Sharks going to do? Are they going to take the winger? Or are they going to take the stronger position of need, which is D, and take Reed? I think it'll be one of those 2 players. So you could pretty much expect one of those 2 players. Like the 3 players that will definitely be gone, as far as I can tell, is McKenna, Reed, and Stenberg. Like, I don't think those will be options there. There's the outside chance that Reed's still available at 5, but I just don't think that's possible. Then it comes down to Malhotra, Karls, Bjork. Like, all those players are now in that mix for that next group. And you could also throw in Verhoff, Smits. Like, teams have these all over the map. So you really can't know with 100% certainty who's going to be available there. I do think, like, in Chicago's case, you look at them, they are kind of set at center. I don't think Malhotra would be the pick for them. And so if Malhotra slips past Vancouver, then that is a player that I think is an option at 5. Karls, same thing. Like, the question is will the Sharks go right shot D, or do they value the left shot D more, even though they have tons of that in their system? Could they take, like, Karls? Like, there's a lot of different scenarios at play, and the Sharks really hold the key to the rest of the draft, and that's why we don't know anything about what they're going to do. Like, it is locked down in that, and as it should, like, and quite frankly, when in that position that they're in, like, that position holds a ton of value. I think there's lots of teams that would consider trading up into that position, with the Sharks not moving outside of like the top 6 or 7, so like, if there are teams that want to jump up there and make that pick, then they might be willing to let them get that. But yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, is like, there's so many possibilities. The other thing too is, like, Chicago is a real wild card because they have so many prospects already. They've picked in the top 5 so often that it's harder, like, for them to, like, they should be looking for more immediate help as much as anybody. And there's really no immediate help in this draft.
Right. That's an excellent point. You mentioned Smits. Is he a guy, considering the level of competition that he's played against this season, is he a guy that might be more likely than some of the other options around that 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe, that could turn pro this year? Or Do you think he
Yeah.
also is another guy that benefits by, playing another year pro, but overseas?
Yeah, so I would so I think Smits is probably the most NHL ready of any player, and
Yeah,
it's not just, definitely the level that he played at this year, but the physical maturity that he has. Like
yeah,
I think like Stenberg, you could probably make a case that he could slot in. I still think that he needs to do a little bit more outside of the NHL. The other thing with Smits is because of his situation, I believe that so he is under contract for next season in Liga. But I do believe if the team wanted him to play in the AHL this year, they could make that arrangement.
yeah,
And I do think that could be the next positive step for him. Um, I would view his like development kind of similar to how the Red Wings handled Moritz Seider. They actually let him play in Sweden for a year and then brought him to the AHL, and then he was in the NHL pretty much right away. Um, so there was a bit more of a gradual thing. I think you could potentially do the same thing with Smits. But the physical maturity is 6'3", 200 plus pounds, solid muscle, great skater, highly intelligent player, not super offensively gifted, but makes good passes. So I could see him slotting in, and not being out of place. He's played in the Olympics, the World Championships, the
yeah.
pro hockey at 2 leagues. So I think he's got the maturity to handle it.
Yeah, yeah, I loved him at the combine too.
He's awesome.
During
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
during his interview, like there's no BS with him. He was just
Mm-mm.
straightforward. Why should a team or why do you think you're the most ready? I play against men.
Yeah.
They do not. I
Yeah.
and he knows that he played well too. I mean, that's the
Oh yeah.
thing is that he drew rave reviews, for playing against men as a teenager.
Yeah. I mean, and for Latvia in multiple tournaments, even when it
Yeah.
was with pros, he was one of their top four defensemen, and so he's just and that like he is exactly as you see him. Like that's how he has always dealt with the media. It's like, he's like
Yeah.
he had to come talk to us every day at the World Juniors, and he's just like, yeah, I was like, hey man, sorry, you just played really well, so now you have to come talk to us. And he's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, but he's just funny. And I think that mentality that he has is probably going to serve him pretty well in getting through and an impactful player. Just to have the personality of seemingly not really being rattled by anything, is really important for a young player.
Yeah, for sure. It is. Now, listen, I don't get to see enough film. I certainly don't just get to see enough of these guys in person. A lot of it's highlights, World Juniors. I
Sure.
do get to see a fair amount of college games. I broadcast a bunch of college hockey games as well. Um, so I don't portray myself as an expert here, but from what I've seen, what I've read, watching the interviews and everything, it seems Carl's and Reed are maybe the best of the lot as all around defensemen, like the entire package. So they're going to bring the offensive game. They're going to put up some numbers, but they're going to be rock solid defensively, and they're going to be hopefully top pair. But at worst case scenario, they project as top four defensemen in the NHL as they progress here. So am I on the mark with that observation? And how do you feel about those two specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, I think like Carl's is more advanced than pretty much anybody defensively. I think that's one of the things, and he still had a ton of points this year, so really good in terms of that.
Yeah.
Reed still needs a bit more work defensively, but I think that he has the willingness and the want to defensively. It's not like he's just one dimensional or anything. They're both incredible skaters. Carl's is more physical between the two.
Yeah.
Reed is the more naturally offensive player, I feel like, and probably better of the two goal scorers between the two players. And so those are guys that really, to me, they are the top two guys on the blue line, and I think one of them will be available at 5. And so, it's nice too because they're right left shot.
Yeah.
Carl's being the lefty, and then Reed being the righty. They both have size, they both have physical strength. They're both going on the college path. Like Reed's going to Michigan State, Carl's going to North Dakota. So there's a lot of similarities there, but I think between the two, like if you're talking about the most advanced defensively, it's probably Carl's. I'd probably put Smits in that category as well. But offensively, it's Reed, it's Rudolph. Those are the players that I think have the more offensive kind of bent to them. But you look at this class and the D class, it's just really tremendous. I think you've got multiple top 4, top pairing style defensemen, which you just don't get very often. And I think that's a good place to be. I think those, you want to build out your back end, and the best way to build out your back end is typically through the draft. It's harder and harder to get those top 4 defensemen through trade. I mean, like we saw the Quinn Hughes trade, and obviously, Adam Fox is a bit of a unique case in how he was acquired over the years. So, but that's in a lot of cases, you're going to be drafting your top 4 defensemen, and or at least 2 of them, and that's what I think we're going to see here. Those guys are going to go very high.
So this is a little bit of an offshoot because he was selected 2 years ago by the Rangers in the first round. How did you feel about EJ Emery at that time? He was end of the first round pick, I think 30th overall, right? And boy, there have been a lot of detractors in his game. The Rangers said at the time, I remember John Lilly doing that interview with him after the draft, and he said, hey, we're not going to rush this guy. We think he's going to be a real good NHL defenseman, but he's raw. And we really need him to go to college, go develop and all that. But still, there's been, I don't know, backlash is the right word, but there's been a lot of skepticism about where EJ Emery is in his development. Where is he going? Really, it took an injury for him to slot into the U.S. World Junior team, into a regular lineup spot. Just kind of your thoughts on his development and where you think he's going to go.
Yeah, so like I really liked EJ in his draft year. I still like EJ as a prospect. And John Lilly was right. Like, he was incredibly raw, and there's still some rawness to him. However, he's at one of the better schools for defensemen in the country. And he's gotten better. And the thing is that, the World Juniors is a measuring stick, and it is, a lot of people put a lot of stock into it. The World Juniors, relative to the actual, development of a player, it's more about what you can do right now. EJ Emery has never been about, the Rangers have never felt, what can he do immediately? It's what can he do in 5 years? And so the thing about EJ, so he's going back to North Dakota. He's got it. I think this will be a big step year for him. Like, he took a step last year. I think he's going to take another step now. The offensive game is not materialized, I think, in a meaningful way, which is definitely a bit of a concern. And so you're trying to say, okay, well, we need a guy that's not only just going to be a stopper, we got to have a guy that moves pucks. If he doesn't move pucks, then you're not a top pairing defenseman. You're not a top 4 defenseman. You're barely hanging on to a bottom pairing position. So that's something that still needs to come along a little bit more. He's got tremendous range. He's a good skater. He's got the size, obviously, and I think he's starting to learn how to be a little bit more aggressive in his defensive game. Where he was slotted, like where he was acquired in the draft, I think he's still very much, still on a track that says he can be there. He just is taking a little bit longer. I am not concerned about him not making it. I think it's more of a matter of how much further does he have to go before he can make it. Like, he could go to North Dakota this year, and he could go for another year after that. Like, I wouldn't be shocked completely if he played his senior season and then went in. The question is like, how much further is he going to get along here? He is potentially going to move down the depth chart a little bit, or around, it may be around the same, but you've got now Verhoff, Carls. Those are guys that are going to be taking times. Ethan McKenzie's another player that's coming in this year. So he's got to fight for that ice time. And that's, I think, actually what is best for him at this point, is that he's got more development ahead of him. And now he's got a bit of a competition, so there's a little bit more of an immediacy to, improving, and I think that'll be a good thing for him.
Do you think, especially at number 5 overall here, where you should be getting a pretty, special player, we're focusing on the defense, going under the assumption that Malhotra, goes somewhere in the top 4. Does it at all come into play where EJ Emery is, where they think his development is, where they think he's going to go, to whether the Rangers decide, we really like these three defensemen. This guy's a lefty. This guy's a righty. Does that all come into play, you think, at this point? Or are they just going to say, hey, listen, well, in this case, it's a bad example because Carl's is a lefty and Emery's right. Carl's is the best guy. We're taking Carl's, that's the guy we love.
Yeah. I don't think it will. Like, I think, I hear a lot from fans, well, we have this and this and this. And I was like, well, if you think the guy in the draft is better than what you have, then you take the guy that's better than what you have. And you just move those guys a little further down the depth chart. So I don't think it necessarily comes into play. I think, their overall draft strategy, every team is going to take into account what they have in their system, what they have, guys with their contracts, the way that lifts are built. Yes, some teams will go strictly based on, what they see and not really take into account what they need. But a lot of teams will consider, okay, where are we deep in terms of position? That's going to change how we weight our list. Like, there'll be different weights to different things. And so, that could happen. But I think in this case, especially in the top five, I don't think you don't tend to look at your, your system. You just try to get the very best player that you can here. And I think that's the approach that the Rangers will take as well, because they should know that they need everything, everything. Like, they need everything, and you can't be too picky. So pick the best player that's on your list and go from there.
So 11 picks sounds great and everything. They've never had this many picks, and there's a great opportunity. They have to restock their prospect pool. We know it's a thin pool that they have. I'd make the argument that if you make some trades, maybe you trade up, they have 4 third-round picks. It's a nice kind of group of picks where maybe you can add that to something to move up, or, if Trocheck ever gets traded, maybe add that to it as a sweetener to get something back. So I don't think they're going to make all 11 picks, but they're going to have a lot of picks here. Younger, faster, more skilled. Like, I know probably every team wants that, but I think if you're the New York Rangers, man, you got to get faster. You got to think we need speed and skill, because we just don't have a lot of it, not only at the NHL level, but in the prospect pool. And I know it sounds silly, because what team wouldn't want those things, right? But I think they really need those things. That, and they have no goalie in the system now. Now, I know Igor is going to be there for a while, whatever. And now Dylan Garand looks like he's going to make that next step up to be his backup. But to me, those are things they need: speed, skill, and they got to find a goalie somewhere midway through the draft that they believe that they can develop down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, if you have a type of player that you're looking for, if you go in and you say, all right, we're gonna build our list in a way that, these guys are gonna be our top guys, and they fit a profile typically. That's good. I think the thing is with the second round pick and the multiple third round picks that the Rangers have, there's going to be a goalie of some quality that's available still at that range. So I think that there's going to be options available to them. I do think the goalie run could start in the second round and kind of go through the third. I'm not high on the goalie class in terms of guys that I think are, there's no like Jesper Wallstedt or Sebastian Kosa, Drew Comessa, like these players that were Spencer Knight, those kind of players that went first round. But I do think there's a number of guys that could potentially slide into the second round. And so, when you're deciding where you're going to go, I think that there's having multiple third round picks is definitely an opportunity, I think, to potentially get that goalie. And so that's something that I would look at there, but they're in a really, like, having 11 picks is a really good place to be, because it gives you so many different options. You can package those thirds to move up if you want to. You can package things, and as you mentioned, like, what does a Trocheck trade look like, different things like that. And the way that we're seeing too, like signing rights and other things of that nature that you could get for, pending free agents or restricted free agents or whatever, some of these mid-round picks could potentially work in getting that player acquired and making that signing. So having options is a great thing, and especially having as many options as they do in the top 100 picks is a position of strength.
Right. Okay. I know you're up against the clock. We got to let you run a little bit. Chris Peters of Flow Sports has been joining us here. Just real quickly,
Sure.
The Ranger fans and media, two names that we're all intrigued by, that, obviously we haven't seen a lot up close yet. A couple prospects that they already have, so they're closer to being NHL ready. They're both going to turn pro this year. They got Liam Greentree in the trade with the LA Kings, and Nathan Aspinall certainly popped this year in the OHL, and he's turning pro as well next year. Kind of your thoughts on where they are, kind of where they're at now, and where each you think they might be, what they project to be in the NHL one day.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Greentree is going to come with the added pressure of being part of the Panarin trade, but I do think that
Right.
he's a guy that has a really good opportunity to challenge for a spot in camp. I think it's more likely he ends up spending some time in Hartford, and he's an incredibly intelligent forward. He's a really good goal scorer too. He puts himself in good positions. He was an absolute beast at Windsor this year. And I
Yeah.
think that he's got an opportunity to be a really good player. The feet need to come a little bit more. I think that it's just a matter of when he plays at his most competitive, he is really, really effective. It can come in and out a little bit. He needs to kind of be dialed in and find that level of consistency, because when he can be physical, he can be mean, he can do those things. And when he's, I think, a more impactful player in the end. So I still think that he's a guy that is really fascinating for me in terms of what he'll be like. He's certainly not, I like, I don't think he's like going to be like a difference making, like, not like a high impact guy immediately, but I think he can grow into that. And he's got the size, he's got the ability. So like, that's the thing, is like, just getting there, just a tremendous junior player. Now
Yeah.
he's got to take that step to pro. As far as Aspinall goes, hugely surprising
Yeah.
season. And it wasn't really the regular season that I was most impressed with him. It was the playoffs. I mean, he was an absolute beast in the playoffs. 17 points in eight games. And they had their first series was like a complete blowout, so there a lot of numbers are inflated. But I think, you look at him, he's huge, size
Yeah.
wise. He's
Yeah.
got skill, and I think that size skill combination is really difficult to kind of manage. So I'd love to see him go to Hartford, probably play start in a little bit of a middle six role, and then kind of see where he can go from there. I don't know that necessarily he's going to be, a 60-point scorer at the NHL level or anything like that, even though he had this tremendous season most recently. But I think that there's a lot more to him than we saw before. And I think that's got to be a player that you're way more excited about being able to continue to develop, because that's, big guy with skill, with the scoring ability, really impressed with where he's at. And I think that that's now kind of found money at this point.
Great stuff. He's Chris Peters from Flow Sports. Now you're going to be a busy man, an on-air busy man during the draft. Just real quickly, clue the fans in on what you'll
Yeah.
be doing. Getting
Yeah.
that little
So,
tee up there. I'll take the assist.
yeah, I appreciate that. Nice primary there, Jim. I appreciate it. Yeah. So really excited. Obviously been covering the draft for a long time, but never really in an on-air capacity. But with the Athletic and Flow Hockey, we are putting the Athletic Hockey Show, which I go on with Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and Max Boltman. And we're going to do a live draft show. We're going to be streaming on YouTube, and also we're going to be available on FloHockey 24/7 channels, which are available on a series of platforms, including things like Amazon Prime, Fubo, and others. So a lot of different places where you can interact. And so if you want to watch the draft and you want to watch it and actually have people on set that have been following the draft all year, and have covered the draft all year, that's a place where you can go. We're going to have pick by pick analysis. We're going to be talking about team fit. We're going to be talking about all the things that you probably want to hear about the player that your team just drafted. So that'll be on the Athletics YouTube page, Flow Hockey's YouTube page. It'll also be available on all Flow Hockey platforms, including, as I mentioned, Flow Hockey 24/7. Super excited to do it with those guys in particular. I feel like it's a combining of some good hockey knowledge about the draft, and I cannot wait for that. So that'll be on Friday night during the course of the first round, and then we'll also have a second round or a day 2 recap show in the evening. So we'll have 2 live opportunities to really interact with this show, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And I cannot wait to be a part of it.
Well, so not only will I enjoy it as I'm covering and writing stories and everything, there is a better than even chance that I'll be quoting you off the show within the stories about whoever the Rangers pick. So I'm telling you in advance, you need to be on your A game, all right?
Yeah, I'll be ready. Just make sure you give us that nice little credit, and we'll be on our way. So yeah, but we're good.
Always, always give the credit and not take it.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Chris Peters from FloHockey. Thanks so much for joining us today and then teeing up what's going to be a huge weekend for the NHL, of course, but certainly specifically for the New York Rangers. And enjoy yourself this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thanks a lot, Jim.
And when we return, we will going to talk a little Dylan Garand, and we didn't even get to the Kachuks yet. We're going to get to that as well when we return with more of Rink Wrap. Welcome back to Rink Wrap. I'm Jim Cerny. Special thanks to Chris Peters for helping us preview the 2026 NHL Draft, which is coming up this weekend. We're going to have so much material for you. We already have these past couple months really kind of building up towards draft and towards free agency and, of course, possible trades this offseason. We've been doing that ever since the season ended. Back in mid-April for the New York Rangers. We're really ratcheting it up this week. We're going to have Jess Rubenstein's full first-round mock draft for all 32 teams, the first 32 picks of which right now the Rangers have picks numbers 5 and 26 in the first round. So we'll get Jess's mock draft that we'll be posting at foreverblueshirts.com. But we'll also be reposting a lot of our feature stories that we've had on players that the Rangers may select with the number 5 pick, the options. We've had, features on Malhotra and Carlson, Smiths, Rudolph, Verhoff, pretty much everybody, in that mix. So, we've got that coming up this week. We'll repost a lot of those stories that we've had the past few weeks. We have brand new stories as well to talk about what's going on. And certainly when there's news, we're going to be all over it as well. And then, of course, we'll have my draft tracker that will begin on Friday, carry you through the first round Friday night, and then through the subsequent rounds and picks on day 2 on Saturday, kind of like a blog type format. Plus we'll have feature stories on what the Rangers do, what they don't do. No matter what happens, we've got you covered. We've got the team here. I'm going to be all over it. Ryan McInerney's here, Jess Rubenstein, John Kreiser. Hopefully Lou Orlando will be in the mix as well. So we got a lot of hands on deck, really all hands on deck, because this is a massively important draft for the New York Rangers this upcoming weekend. So we're going to cover it with the written word. I'm going to come on here with reaction as well. I think we're going to do a live reaction piece either on Friday night, or we might do it right after the draft concludes on Saturday afternoon. Just get your opinion, see where you're at, how you're feeling about what the Rangers did, and let's see what they do. Do they hold on to 11? Do they make 11 picks? I told Chris, I don't think they're going to. I think they'll make some moves. I think they're going to try to move on up. And as he said, and as I've been thinking, you got 4 third-round picks. Now, with that should help you move up. If there's somebody you really like in the second round, early in the second round, or even later first round, that you could package your late second round pick, because that's where the Rangers are sitting right now. They have a late second round pick, and then you got 4 third round picks, right, including your own. So that one is an early pick in the third round. You might be able to package those and move up earlier in the second round and get a player you really like. And, if you can do that, then you're getting into the meat of this draft, right? You need a bunch of high-end talent. The Rangers they're a dearth of really good prospects, right? And really talented prospects, as we've talked about and you're aware of. So I don't think they're going to make all 11 picks. And maybe one of those picks ends up being part of a sweetener of trade, Braden Schneider, Vincent Trocheck. We'll see. It's going to be pretty funny if we get to training camp in September and Schneider and Trocheck are both still here, right? It's possible. is possible. And there are plenty of people that make the argument that, why are you trading Vinny Trocheck, man? Just build around him, right? We know how important it is to be deep down the middle. And if you can tell me that the Rangers have Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck, and Laba down the middle, yeah, that's pretty good. Outside of the Florida Panthers, that's as good as you're going to see, in the NHL, the top to bottom. And even with the warts, if you will, on JT Miller, that's still pretty good down the middle. And hey, you could always move JT to the wing. You can still take faceoffs, but in the offensive zone, after faceoffs and defensively, he could play on the wing. If you have him out there, let's say with Trocheck or Zibanejad, or Zibanejad could go to the wing too. That's something they thought about it in the past. But there are options there if any Trocheck stays. I still think he gets traded. I think they want to get a young, mid-20s NHL player, and then a prospect after that, a guy, somebody that's knocking on the door to the NHL, and then maybe, supplemented with a pick if they can get it. I think that's what Chris Drury's holding out for. We'll see. Right? We'll see. But it would be funny if we get to September and all this talk about all these changes and everything within the Rangers organization. Then really, the only guy that gets moved off the team is Artemi Panarin, last February. I guess Carson Soucy too, back in January, but that was a fait accompli. He was, he wasn't here for the long haul anyway. But all right, wouldn't that be a little bit ironic if that's the only move they make in this retool? I don't know. We'll see. And we'll be here to cover it all for you. So like I said, this upcoming weekend, we'll have a lot of written content this weekend. We'll also be live here with another rink wrap. And then certainly next week, as we bridge, post-draft coverage and then free agency on July 1st, we'll make sure to do a show Monday or Tuesday as well. We'll get a good guest in and we'll kind of really tee things up for that. And then certainly we'll also have live reaction shows, July 1st, July 2nd. We'll see which is the better day to do it, as we recap what the Rangers have done, may still do, in free agency. We'll see. By the way, really good article at Forever Blueshirts today from my buddy John Kreiser. He and I were just talking the other day, and it ended up being kind of the fruits of a new story. He makes the case that the Rangers, forget about Alex Tuch, and there's not much behind him, right? Who's the next best forward? Mason Marchment, maybe, now that Bobby McMahon re-signed in Seattle. But instead of, I don't think the Rangers are going to pay, 8 figures to Alex Tuch, okay? Neither does John. But he said, the spot that they're in, and they're getting these young players. Liam Greentree is going to turn pro this year. Nathan Aspinall turns pro. Jacob Battaglia turns pro. And these guys, for the most part, are probably going to marinate, in Hartford and grow their game as first-year pros. Okay. So you're looking to them down the road. Gabe Perreault's going to be his first completely full NHL season, because last year obviously started in Hartford and then played 49 games on Broadway. This is going to be his first full season in the NHL. He's 21. He'll be here, and we'll see what else they have. But as a bridge, John and I were talking about, what about Patrick Laine or Anthony Mantha as a free agent, right? 2 guys, no doubt they have had their injury struggles in their careers. No doubt that they are, not the best defensive players, especially Laine, but boy, they can score, right? Mantha had 33 goals last season, a career high, 33 goals, 67 or 69 points with Pittsburgh. Rangers could use that, right? Patrick Laine, he only played 5 games last season, had the core muscle surgery. He said he was ready to play after the New Year's. And the Canadiens did not play him. They did not activate him. They did not play him. Didn't play in the playoffs, didn't play down the stretch, none of it. He said he was healthy enough to play. Okay. So, there's probably something there. Listen, Montreal made a great run. They have a great young roster. Barring injury, they didn't need to shake up the mix and bring Patrick Laine back into the lineup. Like, they were playing well enough. They made the Eastern Conference final, right? Marty St. Louis and company, Jeff Gorton and company, they knew what they were doing, right? But if Patrick Laine has been healthy since January, and he's a guy that's had multiple injuries and some off-ice issues as well, the past few years. But if he's healthy and like itching to go here, only played 5 games last year, but has been healthy since January from his surgery, boy, he could be a really intriguing buy low, high reward type option for the Rangers. Because I would think that Laine, both the player and the team, would want a 1-year prove-it contract, right? I mean, Laine's 28 years old, so he still fits into that window that Chris Drury talks about. Get a, younger type player. We don't want to keep loading ourselves down with 30-somethings here in free agency or trades. In fact, that's why Trocheck's being considered to be traded, because he's going to be turning 33 and he's only got a 10-team no trade clause. So, his contract's movable, unlike, Zibanejad and Miller and, who have these no move clauses. So, Laine at 28 years old, a guy that's early in his career was a prolific goal scorer, obviously has had a bunch of peaks and valleys in his career. But just a couple of years ago, what do you have? 20 goals in 50-something games for Montreal before he got hurt. And I get it. That's a big issue, right? But if you can get him, and I think you could, I don't know, a minimum salary, $1 million a year, 1.2, somewhere in that range, and he pops for you, and he's a power play guy for you, a couple of things happen. A, you catch lightning in a bottle, and he really might help, the team make a push for the playoffs this season. Listen, if the Rangers stay healthy, they make a couple changes here. They're not a Stanley Cup contender, right? They're not winning the Stanley Cup. But if they stay healthy and, Gabe Perreault comes along, Lafreniere, continues to take that next step as he did in the second half last season, Mika's Mika, JT's healthy, maybe not what he was a few years ago, but better than last season. The power play continues to click. Fox stays healthy. Shesty stays healthy. That team's going to contend for a playoff spot, I think. And I listen, they're not a great team, but it's such a flawed Eastern Conference. And we'll see what other teams do. I mean, that's part of the package here too. We can't look into the crystal ball and know exactly how other teams are going to fill their holes, right? Rangers have holes to fill, but so do other teams that they're going to be battling against. But if they catch lightning in a bottle, just argument's sake, Patrick Laine, and he fills it up and he has some good chemistry with, whomever you put next to him. Let's say it's JT, and JT provides some defensive conscience on a line with Patrick Laine. Because listen, Laine will drive Mike Sullivan crazy with his lack of, of D, playing, D, back checking and all that. But he can score. And this team struggles to score, right? And score off the rush. He's a good player. They're good on the power play when everyone's healthy, but he can certainly add to that. And, at a fraction of the cost of, I know Alex Tuch is a different type player, but, he is a 30-goal scorer. But a fraction of the cost and long-term commitment that it would take to get Alex Tuch, or it would have been to keep it Artemi Panarin. And again, I'm not comparing the players. Like, I'd rather have Panarin than Laine, even Panarin at 35, right? Or 34. But Laine, 28, doesn't turn 29 until April, right? So he's not an old guy, though you could argue with the injuries that ages you a little bit, but he should be fresh. Like, he said he was ready to play in January. Okay, Montreal made the decision not to play him, not to activate him. But he said he was ready to play. So you go through a whole healthy summer of training here, training camp, and then, knock wood, he's healthy, doesn't sustain another injury, right? I don't know. That could be worth the risk. Now, if you're telling me that we get, all of a sudden there's this bidding war for Patrick Laine and he's getting 3-year contract offers and, for, more than, the money that I laid out before. Yeah, then for me, that's a pass. But if we're talking about a 1-year prove-it contract where the guy's going to be motivated, to hit free agency next summer as a 29-year-old and, is coming off a 20-odd goal season, just taking modest numbers really for what he's accomplished in his career. I don't know. I'd certainly talk to Laine and his agent if I'm Chris Drury. That to me is not a terrible move. And, your other option is, okay, let's say that you're not on the path to the playoffs next season, but Laine's having a good year. Well, guess what? At the trade deadline, then he's proved himself, again, this is argument's sake, proves himself to be healthy and productive. You don't feel like you're going to make a playoff run, or you feel like, you know what, we could get some assets, some of the younger assets that we want. Now we've got another tradable commodity ahead of the deadline. So that's why I would consider Patrick Laine. Mantha, on the other hand, I would not. For me, that's kind of a hard pass, no. And it's not, he had a terrific season and a terrific impact on the Penguins last year. But to me, it's a hard pass and no. He's 32, has a similar type, tough injury history as Laine. From 21 to 25, he was injured every season in there. He is a 4-time 20-goal scorer. He surpassed 30 goals for the first time last season. Listen, he can be a force when he's healthy. He's a good player, but he's going to make some money, and somebody's going to give him a contract with term. He signed his 1-year prove-it contract coming off an injury a year ago, right? He's like the great case example. If the Rangers do go down the road with Laine, you point at Anthony Mantha and you say, whoa, okay. Yeah, work there. They didn't pay him much money. They got a ton of return. They helped to make the playoffs. Great. Let's see if Laine can do that for us. But now Mantha's advanced to that next stage. He was healthy, he was productive, and now he wants to get paid and he wants term. So for the Rangers, it makes no sense, right? This isn't what you do in your retool, sign on for Anthony Mantha for, even 4 years, so it carries him till he's 36. And with his injury history, not worth the risk. So that's where I stand on that. How about the Kachuk trade, huh? Holy hell. Father's Day. I'm in Red Hook, Brooklyn, spending the day. A lot of fun. Very cool hood. Totally loved Red Hook. My first time there. Good eating. It was a beautiful day, hang out by the water. Got downtown Manhattan, just right across the East River there. A great view of the Statue of Liberty. And there might have been the Widow Jane Distillery there too. Just dropping a little plug. You see where my Father's Day went. But yeah, so hanging out Red Hook, Brooklyn. And first comes the news that the Rangers re-signed Dylan Garand. Shout out to my buddy John Kreiser. Fortunately, he was in front of his laptop where I wasn't on Sunday, and John banged out that story about Dylan Garand signing a 2-year, $1.75 million contract. To me, significant. The most significant thing here is I think we all knew that they're going to re-sign Dylan Garand. But what a difference a year makes. Last year, that contract didn't get done. His 1-year deal, 1-year, 2-way contract with the Rangers last season didn't get done until mid-August. Again, I've never gotten answers as to why. Was it Garand? Was it the Rangers? Why didn't that happen sooner? I don't know, but it was mid-August. Here, it's clear. It was a priority. Those 3 games he played down the stretch really turned heads. So, he was already the number 1 goalie prospect in the organization. And he had been an AHL All-Star in 24-25. Last year got off to not a great start, but he found his game behind not a good team in Hartford. Rangers didn't bring him up in January when Igor got hurt. I questioned that at the time, but they brought up Spencer Martin to split the load with Jonathan Quick instead. Didn't go well. So at the end of the season, he does come up. He does get his chance. It was at a time that he was playing well in the NHL. So he carried that, game with him and the confidence with him. And he was terrific, right? He was really good in his 3 starts. Now, it's only 3 starts. So I see why the Rangers have faith in him. No question. Mike Sullivan really was won over in that stretch. I mean, he just praised Garand left and right. His mental approach, his game itself at the NHL level. I mean, Dylan was locked in, and now he's locked into a 2-year contract. Really has all the looks of being Igor's backup on opening night, right? But free agency is coming July 1st. There will be goalies out there. I would make the case that the New York Rangers should sign a veteran goalie in free agency. We've seen this, what Spencer Martin can or cannot do, right? When brought up in an emergency, because you need to prepare for the emergency here. Now, maybe, let's say Igor let's say same scenario as last year. And Garand's got to be your number 1 goalie for a month. And then Martin's your number 2 if you don't make another move. Maybe Garand is up to that, right? He was, playing on a consistent basis in the minors. He could do it at the NHL level, but can he? There's one thing with making 3 starts spread out over time and playing really well down the stretch for the Rangers in a lost season, as to replacing Igor, being the number 1 guy, and this, right in the midst of the season, you're still in the playoff hunt and all that. That's an unknown with Dylan Garand. But his past history, juniors, World Junior Championships, will show you that he could be ready. He could be a guy that plays his best on the biggest stage. And that's what you would need, as your number 2 if your number 1 guy goes down. But I still would sign a veteran goalie. So I'm not talking about Sergei Bobrovsky or Cam Talbot or, anybody like that's free this summer. Not a big name guy, not a guy that you have to sign to an NHL contract, a guy that you sign to a 2-way deal. There are a few of them out there. Cal Peterson, blanking that's a Phoenix Copley. I'm not saying that they're great goalies, but just to have another veteran there just in case, right? They've got NHL experience. They've been a little bit better than Spencer Martin at the NHL level. And they could also play with Martin, in the American League this season. Now, the only rub there is if the Rangers believe that Callum Tongue is a young goalie that they want to develop in the AHL along with the veteran. Well, in this scenario, let's say you sign, one of those guys I mentioned, or Brandon Halverson or somebody like that, who's an AHL goalie, has some NHL experience, is a veteran. But if you have him and Martin in the AHL, then Callum Tongue is back in the ECHL. He may be playing every game, he might be your number 1 guy, but he's not playing at a higher level. So maybe not a perfect scenario to bring in a veteran, but I think you need somebody in between Martin and Garand. And that doesn't mean I don't believe in Dylan Garand, but again, last year really scared me. What we saw. Rangers were not properly prepared for what would happen if Igor Shesterkin missed a month. And that's no knock on Jonathan Quick. He would have been the answer for years and years and years. Yeah, okay, we've got Jonathan Quick. Let's slide him right in. He was 40 years old. He looked old. And it was 2 seasons in a row where, you saw the dip in his game. And he obviously felt it and saw it as well. He retired at the end of the season. So that's what I would think in free agency. But good on Dylan Garand, good on the Rangers getting that done. And then I'm driving home from Red Hook and phone's blowing up. And, I'm finding out that the Brady Tkachuk trade went down. Just a quick reaction. You probably read my story, how that trade affects the New York Rangers. And they're on the fringes, there are ways and reasons why it affects the Rangers. Part of it is perception. He wasn't on, and the Rangers weren't on his 4-team wish list that he did accept a trade to. So it's just something to think about. It's not going to make or break the Rangers. And listen, if I'm the Rangers, if the cost was 3 first-round picks and a second rounder here to get Brady Tkachuk, again, who fits the window, 26 years old, physical player, winner, gold medalist in the Olympics, a guy that's, scored 30 goals multiple times in the NHL, so he's skilled, he's strong, he's a leader, he's physical, he won a gold medal. He's still only 26. And he can slot in as one of your centers, and then, you certainly trade Vincent Trocheck then, and bring back maybe somebody to play on his wing or JT's wing, whatever. Sure, that would have been nice. But 3 first-round picks and a second rounder, to me, that's a no. And I know he's Brady Tkachuk, and he immediately would rocket up, best Rangers in the lineup. But to me, for this team, they're not winning the Stanley Cup this season, right? And I know Kachuk could be a guy that, could have been here for years. You re-sign him and you keep him here, and then he's a centerpiece moving forward. Then JT Miller becomes more of a complementary player instead of more of a focal point. And from that view, that's great, right? That is really great. And, those two get along great as well. It's all water under the bridge. Rangers weren't even on his 4-team list. So yeah, that's not great. And then, I went into it in the story. I'll let you read the story. Go to foreverblueshirts.com. There are other ways that the Rangers are affected a little bit. Again, not in a major way, but affected a little bit by this trade. How about the Florida Panthers down the middle? Sasha Barkov is healthy again, missed all of this past season with, following the knee surgeries and the injuries and all that. He played really well at the World Championships. So now he's played, he's confident. So not only is he feeling good, but he knows he's played, and he's played in some, good competitive games here at the end at the World Championships. So he's going to be back ready to go with the team that's going to be healthy again. They were banged up, not only your top players, but all the way through the lineup, right? Those 3 straight runs to the Cup final had decimated them. And Matthew Kachuk, Brady's brother, is a great example of that. He missed half the season, but he played the second half, and he played in the Olympics, and he was healthy. So you get down the middle: Barkov, Brady Tkachuk, Anton Lindell. Damn, that's pretty good. That's pretty scary. Like, I thought the Florida Panthers were going to be right back in the mix next season anyway. But now with this, wow. And I like the fact that Brady Tkachuk doesn't have to be the guy. Like, I'm not sure I want to build my team around Brady Tkachuk. No disrespect. But I think you have Barkov doing the heavy lifting as the top line center. And listen, Matthew is a bigger star, I think, than Brady. Certainly, 2-time Cup champion and everything. But he's the bigger star. I think it just takes some of the pressure off Brady. He doesn't have to be the real focal guy. Ooh, that makes that team really good. Let's see what they do with their goaltending. I know Bobrovsky's looking for a lot of money and a lot of term, and he wasn't good last year. And you could argue even the previous season he was not great. Those underlying metrics were not great for Sergei Bobrovsky. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. They got to get a goalie. See how Florida approaches it. They're tight against the cap. They've got some big decisions to make. They're probably going to lose more bottom 6 guys. We'll see where that goes. Speaking of bottom 6 guys that used to play for the Florida Panthers, it's like, just pivot, trying to hit a bunch of topics before we close up the show this week. I'll give you a name that I'm really intrigued by for the Rangers in free agency. And again, it's not a big sexy name. It's not a 8-figure contract, type guy. I really like Kevin Stenberg a lot. Really like him a lot. And I think he'd be a really good fourth line center for the Rangers. If they're going to move Vinny Trocheck, and that would probably move, Noah Laba up to the 3C. To me, Laba could play 3C or 4C. But let's say Laba moves up to 3C then because they trade Trocheck. If that's the plan, then I really like making a run at Kevin Stenberg. He's 2025 Stanley Cup champion. He played in Utah after that. He's a guy that I find, really intriguing. He should be 2024 Stanley Cup champion, then spent the past couple of years. He left as a free agent. So he's a guy that really intrigues me. I know a lot of people have mentioned Teddy Bluger as well. I get it. I really like Stenberg. I like him a lot. I like the fact that he won recently. But we'll see. He may want to go to a team that's got a better chance to win. But I think, if you trade Trocheck and he brings back some sort of young wing, and you can go, Mika JT, Noah Laba, and Kevin Stenberg down the middle, I think that's pretty nice. And I'll tell you what I really like there. And now, we're getting into things that we really need to talk about closer to training camp because we don't know what the Rangers are going to do all this offseason. But boy, if they have a third line and they can keep it together for years, I think, of Laba in the middle, flanked by Ty Cartier and Will Cooley, like that a lot. I like it defensively. I like it offensively. So many different ways I like that. That would be a cool third line. And then if Stenlund's your fourth line center, have at it in training camp, right? Have at it. Give a shot to Adam Sikora, Yaroslav Halemash, Matt Rempe, Adam Edstrom, Brody Lamb. Let these guys get in there. They give everybody a whack at that spot, or at those two wings. And then, as we wrote about this week, a good article by Brian McInerney at Forever Blueshirts, got to replace Johnny Brodzinski too. He's probably leaving as a free agent. So you got to figure out your 13th forward as well. So a lot going on in the NHL. We didn't even get to the Maple Leafs coaching situation. Jim Hiller's their new head coach. Then how about Mike Babcock getting cleared by the NHL and the NHLPA? So if the Oilers wish that they hire him as head coach, where's that going to go? The Darren Radish sign and trade deal where he moves from Tampa to Toronto. So Toronto makes a major move in this offseason. A lot going on in Toronto, first with the management shakeup and then the new coach. And, now they bring in Radish, all the Matthew Nyes, rumors, a lot going on in the NHL. We're here to cover it for you on the Rink Wrap podcast and, of course, at foreverblueshirts.com. As of now, the game plan is that this weekend we will have a live reaction show where you can, post your questions and comments as we review what the Rangers do at the 2026 NHL Draft. If something happens before then of note, trade or, something significant, some significant news, we'll come back on and do another live show. But if not, we'll catch you this weekend. And then we'll set up NHL free agency, which begins next week, July 1st. And then we'll recap that. And a whole lot going on with the New York Rangers and the NHL. It's a lot of fun. It's a great time of year. It's exciting. And we thank Chris Peters from FloHockey for joining us here on Rink Wrap this week. So enjoy yourselves. Hope you enjoyed the show this week. Get fired up. Draft is around the corner. And we'll catch you on the next edition of Rink Wrap.